In 2023, a murder shocked all of Britain. A teenager in a crowded park. Her body was found dead on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The victim's name was Briana Ghey. Her name was seen in the news for months. Because not only was the murder itself strange, but also what was behind it, and worst of all, the people who did it. The results of the investigation left people breathless with fear and shock. Brianna was born on November 7, 2006. She lived with her family in Birchwood, a neighborhood in the city of Warrington. Warrington is an old industrial city between Liverpool and Manchester in England. It has a population of about 170,000 people. Their neighborhood is a small area in the north of the city. Basically, you can find everything there for a normal life. There's a supermarket, a small shopping center, a cafe, and Birchwood Community High School, where Brianna was in 11th grade. Brianna was a typical teenager in her free time. She made TikTok videos and had several thousand followers. She was really confident online. It was like social media was a kind of safe haven for her. She uploaded dance, fashion, and makeup videos there. But she also struggled with hopelessness, anxiety, and depression. She was dealing with all of them at the same time. Brianna had autism, ADHD, and social anxiety disorder. Dealing with even one of these issues is really tough for a teenager. Let alone several of these disorders, which Brianna struggled with every single day. Because of these problems, she couldn't participate in class like the other students at school. Another thing that made her life harder was that she was trans. She had been living as a girl since she was 14. Unfortunately, according to her friends, her classmates constantly bullied her. The school principal and Brianna's teacher later on. Of course, they denied that any bullying took place. What is clear is that Brianna asked the principal if she could study in the support room. There, teachers help students who can't attend class because of learning difficulties or anxiety. Brianna was able to study and focus more easily there. It was in that same support room at Birchwood High School, at age 16, that she met Scarlett Jenkinson. Scarlett was a year younger than Brianna and had just come to Birchwood. She had been expelled from her previous school because in September 2022, she had given CBD gummies to one of her classmates. But the two of them quickly realized they had a shared interest. They both liked doing hair, and that's how they became friends. Scarlett was 15 years old. After she was expelled from her previous school in September 2022. She was in touch with an old friend named Edie Radcliffe, who was also 15. They mostly talked to each other through social media and occasionally met up in person. 2 months after meeting Brianna, Scarlett messaged Edie. Edie was certainly. In response, Edie said, "Femboy is non-binary. How do you feel when you talk to her?" In another message, she wrote, "I don't think you're really crushing, you're more curious and fascinated." In their messages, Scarlett and Edie talked about Brianna in a really mean way. Scarlett, as she herself said, not only did she have a crush on Brianna, she also had a crush on anything related to horrific crimes and serial killers. In December 2022, Scarlett sent Edie a link to a website that discussed rape, torture, and murder. She wrote, "I'm obsessed with watching real videos on the dark web." This 15-year-old girl had already been interested in horror movies and true crime. Like a lot of people, she watched videos and documentaries about these topics. She listened to podcasts and researched serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy. But Skylett's interest in true crime was way more than just ordinary curiosity. Because apparently, she had found a friend like Eddie who shared this curiosity with her. On January 1st, 2023, Eddie sent a picture of a hunting knife and wrote, "There goes my money. I bought a knife with it." On January 23rd, Skylett wrote to Eddie that she had given Brianna some pills. So many that she should have died. After taking the pills, Brianna got sick. But she and her mom thought maybe her appendix was inflamed. But after a few days, she got better, and after a while, she was completely fine. In the days that followed, Skylett and Eddie talked more about murder. They made a list of 5 people they wanted to kill together. Brianna's name was also on that list. Plus, there was a boy that Eddie called a pervert. Then there was a boy who had embarrassed Skylett in front of her teachers. And 2 others that Skylett said were her boyfriends. They were her exes. In fact, in January 2023, Skylett tried to lure one of the boys from the list to a park. She made a fake Instagram account to get close to that boy and set up a meeting with him, talking to Eddie about it. They talked about how they would kill the boy, who would stab him with a knife, and which part of his body to target. But fortunately, that boy didn't fall for Skylett's fake profile and blocked her on social media. But that same couch at Linear Park was still part of Eddie and Skylett's plans. They kind of envisioned their horrific fantasies right in that park. On January 27th, Skylett tried to lure Brianna there. With the intention of finishing her off in the park, Eddie was also aware of the plan. In a message to Skylett, he wrote, "I'm curious to see if she screams like a girl or a boy." Skylett and Eddie, they had agreed that Eddie would bring his knife, and they even set up code words in case Skylett wanted Eddie to get his knife ready to attack. He would look at him and cough. The code word for attacking Brianna was gay. But a few days before the meeting, Brianna wrote to Skylett that she couldn't come on January 27th because she already had plans with someone else. Skylett and Eddie, still, they saw each other in the park and spent time together after that day. They didn't give up on their plan to kill Brianna and started looking for another time to do it. Skylett wanted to carry out the murder as soon as possible, but Eddie was only available on weekends. Because she had exams at school and said she was too stressed during the week because of them. It was interesting that apparently killing someone didn't stress her out as much as exams did. Unbelievable, Skylett. She wrote to her, "I don't want to wait. I really want her to die. I want to see the terror on her face and hear the sound of her screams from the pain." On February 3rd, Skylett sent a photo of a handwritten note to Eddie. On it was written, Saturday, February 11th, 2023. Victim, Briana Ghey. Underneath, Skylett had written out the plan for Brianna's murder in detail. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Eddie and Skylett met to go over the plan again. The plan was for them to pick Brianna up from the bus stop together, take her to the park, and then kill her with Eddie's knife. On February 11th, 2023, around noon, Brianna got on the number 28 bus. She was supposed to meet Skylett and Skylett's friend, who was Eddie. Skylett had told her which bus to take and which ticket to buy. For Brianna, who was still struggling with social anxiety disorder, taking public transportation was difficult. It was pretty hard for her to do it alone. Brianna texted her mom from the bus. "Mom, I'm alone on the bus and I'm scared." Her mom replied, "It's okay, everything is fine." 12 minutes later, at 1:53 p.m., Brianna got off and met Skylett and Eddie at the Colchith bus stop. The two of them had already met each other earlier, around 1 o'clock. Eddie's mom had dropped off her 15-year-old son in front of the local Sainsbury's supermarket branch. Skylet was waiting for him there, and together they went to the bus stop to pick up Brianna. Then all three of them headed to the park together. This was the first time Eddie and Brianna had met each other. At 2 in the afternoon, Brianna texted a friend and said that Skylet was acting weird. She wrote, "Skylet is really strange, kind of off. She acts like a drug dealer, you know, Skylet." Skylet had lured Brianna to the park under the pretense that they could try drugs together, pretending she was chatting with a dealer. She even used a fake Snapchat account to show Brianna some fake chats. At 2:31 p.m., Skylet messaged herself, pretending to be the drug dealer. "Sorry, buddy, I'm almost there. 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops." But in reality, Skylet hadn't arranged any drugs at all. She had a much worse plan. A little over half an hour later, at 3:06 p.m., a message was sent from Brianna's phone. Even though Brianna was with Skylet, this message was sent to Skylet. It said, "Girl, where are you?" But this message actually wasn't from Brianna. Skylet herself had sent it to her own phone from Brianna's phone. She did this to somehow create an alibi for herself, because by that time, Briana Ghey was already dead. 7 minutes after sending that message, Brianna was found. At 3:13 p.m., two passers-by were walking past the crime scene. They saw something, or rather, someone, on the ground, with a girl standing next to them and a boy sitting on the ground. When the passers-by got closer, those two people took off running. That's when the passers-by realized there was a girl, badly injured, lying on the ground. Her coat and bag were covered in blood. They immediately called emergency services. But the truth is, it was no use, because Brianna had been dead for quite some time. After 40 minutes of trying to resuscitate her, the paramedics had to give up. The killers had stabbed Brianna 28 times. It's likely that 21 of those wounds were inflicted when her back was turned to the attacker. The deepest wound was more than 12 centimeters. It had penetrated deep into her body. With those blows, Brianna really didn't stand the chance of surviving. Before we continue with the story, please support us by liking and subscribing. Thank you so much. While the paramedics were doing everything they could to save Brianna, Scarlett and Eddie ran away and got separated during their escape. They threw Brianna into a drainage ditch. Scarlett ran back to her own house, and Eddie got on a bus heading to his hometown. When both of them got home, it seemed like they had no problem dealing with the murder they had just committed. Not at all. They were even thinking about how to cover their tracks so fewer people would suspect them. Both of them acted as if they had no idea about Brianna's murder. Scarlett would send news reports about the murder to Eddie and write to her about it. "My brother also told me not to go to that park anymore because a woman had been stabbed there." Eddie replied, "Oh Jesus Christ, really?" Scarlett even messaged Brianna too. In her message, she wrote, "Girl, are you okay? A teenage girl got stabbed in Linear Park. It's all over the news. Why did you leave us there? For that ridiculous guy who came from Manchester. Seriously, what you did was stupid." Scarlett had even thought about making up a suspicious person. Like, supposedly someone had come from Manchester, but obviously there was no such person at all. She even told this story to her mom. She told her that Brianna wanted to meet up with a 17-year-old stranger from Manchester in the park, her own mom. Her mom actually believed it and even called the police to report this supposedly important lead. During that same conversation, Scarlett's mom handed the phone to Scarlett herself so she could tell the whole story. Scarlett said that she was sitting on a bench in the park with Eddie and Brianna. Then Brianna looked at her phone and suddenly said she had to go quickly to meet a boy. She only said that the boy was from Manchester and was 17 years old. Scarlett didn't have his name or any other information about him. That's what Scarlett said. She wrote to Eddie everything she had told the police, so he would be aware of the situation too. She gave him precise instructions on what to say if the police asked him any questions. She even posted a kind of memorial notice for Brianna on social media. She wrote that Brianna was one of the best people she had ever met in her life and an amazing friend. The police tried to obtain footage from surveillance cameras that showed Brianna's last moments. In the videos, it could be seen that Brianna was very upset on the bus, and on the other hand, there were also videos showing her walking toward the park with a boy and a girl. In addition, there was also the story Scarlett told about meeting up with a boy from Manchester. But this story didn't match up with the footage from the surveillance cameras. Despite the creative story and attempts to throw people off, things didn't turn out the way they wanted. When Eddie was arrested, he seemed calm and said he could explain everything. But Scarlett started crying, and when they asked her if she knew why she was a suspect, she said it was because she was the last person to see Brianna alive. It was like she was shocked that she'd been caught and her plan hadn't worked. Like most killers, she thought she was smarter than everyone else. While both of them were being interrogated at the police station, Scarlett kept repeating the lie about the boy from Manchester. But Edie said something else. Even though Scarlett had told her a little earlier to stick to the same story no matter what, Edie actually claimed that Brianna had left Scarlett alone for a short time to go pee behind a tree. When she came back, she saw Scarlett holding a knife with both hands, repeatedly stabbing Brianna. When she saw this scene, she ran away in fear, but the police quickly realized that Edie's story wasn't true either. Because a hunting knife was found in her house, and Brianna's blood was on the blade. Handwritten plans for the murder were also found in Scarlett's house. When the police confronted them with all this evidence, the two decided to exercise their right to remain silent. So they didn't say anything else. Now, let's talk a bit about Scarlett and Edie's personalities. They were both just ordinary teenagers. Eddie was an exemplary student with excellent grades. He seemed like a quiet and reserved person. He had a younger sister and an older brother. His brother constantly picked on him because of Eddie's autistic behaviors. This happened a lot, both before and even after his autism was diagnosed. Eddie was diagnosed with autism after Brianna's murder. His parents were a graphic designer and a manager. Eddie had even participated in an international boxing competition once, and he was somewhat successful. While he was in custody, because of his autism, he developed a kind of selective mutism. He wouldn't talk to anyone, except his mom. But Scarlett was the daughter of a teacher and a construction worker, and she had 3 older brothers. Scarlett later said that around the age of 11, she started having severe anxiety issues, and that's when it all began. She started self-harming before the trial, and she was diagnosed with mild autism, ADHD, and anxiety disorder, which were a lot like Brianna's problems. Eddie once said about Scarlett that she's not a normal person. He meant that Scarlett keeps her distance from most people. Or she used to hurt animals. In short, Scarlett and Eddie's trial lasted 18 days and started on November 27, 2023. Both defendants were asked whether they pleaded guilty or not guilty. Because of his selective mutism, Eddie couldn't or wouldn't speak in court. So he held up a piece of paper with something written on it. Not guilty. Scarlett also said she was not guilty. Both of them blamed each other for Brianna's murder, but Eddie was forced to answer questions in court. He sat in a separate room, typed his answers on a computer, and an officer read them out loud for him. But in the end, both of them were found guilty of Brianna's murder. On the day the verdict was announced, it was revealed that Scarlett had confessed for the first time that she had stabbed Brianna. She told a prison psychologist that first Eddie stabbed Brianna, then got scared and ran away, and after that, Scarlett finished the job and stabbed Brianna several more times with a knife. She even said that she wanted to take a piece of Brianna's flesh as a keepsake. Scarlett will stay in prison for at least 22 years. She can only apply for parole starting January 2044. Eddie Radcliffe, on the other hand, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge in this case said that the murder was extremely sadistic, and it's likely that Eddie and Scarlett did this just for the thrill of killing. This is clear from the many messages and texts they exchanged before the murder. Regarding Eddie, transphobia was also considered a secondary motive. That was also evident from the messages and comments he made about Brianna's gender. However, Briana Ghey's murder was not considered a hate crime based on sexual identity. This decision was controversial, especially given the messages Eddie had sent. And there are still many people who disagree with it. Brianna's murder shook all of Britain. In many major cities, memorials were held for this teenager after the murder. They were held. Some of these memorials had hundreds or even thousands of participants. In front of the Ministry of Education office, there was also a large gathering in London. With the help of a fundraising campaign, more than £100,000 was raised for Brianna's family. This money was used for the funeral and memorial service to honor Brianna's short life. Brianna's family turned her bedroom into a kind of memorial room for themselves. Donations were also made to the Mindfulness in Schools project. This organization holds training courses for teachers to educate them about students' mental health, so they become aware. In many news articles, Brianna as being trans wasn't mentioned at first. In some other articles, her previous name was used, the name she had before her gender transition. Both of these things were later criticized. Because the messages showed that at least some form of disdain toward trans people existed and still exists, it could be inferred that Brianna's identity was one of the reasons for her murder. Spring 2024, Brianna's mother met with the mother of her daughter's killer. Brianna's mother constantly emphasizes that she holds no grudge against the families of Scarlett and Eddie. She says that meeting helped her mentally come to terms with the mother of her daughter's killer. She tries to turn her daughter's horrific fate into something positive. She is still a social activist, working to raise awareness in schools. She also asks schools to ban the use of mobile phones for children under 16 to prevent cyberbullying. But in the end, it's very important that when we talk about the impact of mental disorders like autism or ADHD, we make sure not to upset or label the children who have these disorders in any way. Our goal is to better understand these disorders and how they affect behavior, not to judge or make assumptions. We should keep in mind that even among people who seem completely normal to us, there might be some degree of these disorders present, which could show themselves under difficult life circumstances or emotional stress. What I mean is, we shouldn't consider people with these disorders as separate from our society and environment. It's even possible that we ourselves are unaware of having some of these disorders, because the degree in us isn't high enough to make us or our parents seek help. In general, children with autism and ADHD, just like any other child, need love, respect, and acceptance. Violence and risky behaviors aren't related to having mental disorders, and various factors contribute to these behaviors. They play a role, for example, the influence of social media on personality development. The violent and sadistic content that these two were following on the dark web probably had an effect on shaping their personalities and their violent tendencies. And that's our story for tonight. Until the next case, take care.